On a dark night, when almost everyone had left the small town to return to their respective homes, a young man named Rizal sat alone at the bus stop. He was an office worker, accustomed to coming home late at night after finishing his work. Until one night, a terrifying incident changed his life forever. Rizal waited patiently, although he felt a suspicious silence around him. The streetlights flickered, creating eerie shadows around him. Suddenly, an old bus stopped in front of him, its door inviting him to board. "It's already too late, but this bus is still operating?" muttered Rizal. But uncertainty controlled his mind. He decided to board, ignoring the uneasy feeling that enveloped him. As he entered the bus, the air felt cold and stiff. There were no other passengers on the bus, only Rizal himself. He sat in the back seat, trying not to think about the tension in the air. However, the longer he stayed on the bus, the stronger his discomfort grew. The bus drove along the deserted road, passing through dark trees and seemingly empty houses. Rizal tried to convince himself that it was all just an overactive imagination, but strange sounds in the distance made him shiver. When the bus stopped at the next stop, Rizal saw someone boarding. The person was wearing torn and soaking wet clothes, their face pale and their eyes empty. Without saying a word, they sat in the seat in front of Rizal. Rizal felt his heart pounding. He wanted to ask what had happened to the person, but he was too frightened to speak. Instead, he chose to remain silent, hoping that this was all just a nightmare. However, as the journey continued, more and more strange passengers boarded the bus. They all looked the same, pale, disheveled, and not uttering a word. They just sat silently, as if waiting for something. Rizal felt like his heart was about to burst. He wanted to scream, to run as far away as possible from that place, but his legs wouldn't move. Fear had frozen him in place, allowing darkness to seep into his mind. As the bus drove further into the dark night, Rizal began to see something unnatural outside the window. Dark shadows darted past quickly, as if they were chasing the bus. Rizal couldn't believe his eyes and mind. He pinched himself several times, trying to make sure this wasn't a dream. Suddenly, the bus stopped in the middle of the dark road. Its engine died, and the lights went out. Rizal sat tensely, waiting for what would happen next. When he looked out the window, he saw something that made him shiver. In the middle of the dark road stood a tall, dark figure. It had glowing red eyes and a menacing smile on its face. Without a word, the figure began to approach the bus with slow and steady steps. Rizal felt his breath catch. He knew he had to get out of there as quickly as possible, but his legs still wouldn't move. All he could do was sit silently, watching in horror as the figure drew closer. When the figure finally reached the bus, Rizal felt a chilling coldness wash over him. He could sense the presence of something evil and inhuman from the figure. And as it opened the bus door, Rizal knew he had to do something to save himself. With all his courage, Rizal jumped from his seat and ran to the back door of the bus. He pushed the door with all his might, hoping to escape before the figure could reach him. And as the fresh night air greeted his face, he felt relieved. However, his relief didn't last long. When he looked back, he realized that the figure was still there, standing in the middle of the dark road. And this time, it wasn't alone. Surrounding it were dozens, even hundreds of other dark figures, all with glowing red eyes and menacing smiles on their faces. With horror, Rizal realized that he had entered into something much larger than he had ever imagined. He had entered into a world filled with darkness and unimaginable terror. With trembling steps, Rizal ran away from that place, trying to leave behind all that he had just witnessed. However, he knew that his memories would haunt him forever. And although he may have successfully escaped the danger of that night, he could never forget the terrifying experience on the haunted